Just as the 60s had the Beatles, the 70s had the Eagles. They had a very consistent stretch of albums, and although key members had left the group at different times, somehow they're able to find the right people to replace those individuals, and they continue to make their sound new, revitalized, and fresh. I'd like to go through their albums from worst to best. And hey, let's see if you agree with my list. At number 7, and I'm sure that most of us can agree with this, would be their comeback album, Long Road Out of Eden. It's not a bad album. Actually, as I have gotten older, I have grown to appreciate this album a lot more. There's a lot of slower songs on this album that kind of plot, but like I said, with age, it comes across a lot better. Still, I am more attracted to a lot of the rock and roll tracks on this album, with the one really to stand out would being Frail Grasp on the Big Picture. I love that breakdown in that song. The other thing that I noticed, whereas Joe Walsh fits in a lot better on some of the other albums as sounding more like an Eagle, his song like The Last Good Time in Town, whereas, hey, it's a good song, but to me it's a Joe Walsh song. It's not really Eagles, which isn't a bad thing, to be perfectly honest. I mean, Joe Walsh is pretty awesome. So here comes the argument, okay? Would this have been a better album if had it been a single album? Yeah, you got that right. I find myself liking Disc 2 a lot more than Disc 1. And so, I don't know, I mean, there's a few tracks that I do like off of Disc 1. If you take a few of those and then a few tracks off of Disc 2, you can make a pretty good single album. That might be a topic that I might discuss at a later date. All right, coming in at number 6, and actually, initially this album for number 6, I had initially had it last, and I was going off of what I had thought about the albums previously, but when I listened to it, I realized it's actually got some pretty good songs on it. And so number 6 is The Long Run, the follow-up to the smash hit Hotel California. Man, was this a disappointing follow-up. The interesting thing with this album is it feels like they're really trying to remain contemporary, right? Like songs like The Disco Strangler, which, by the way, is kind of a cool song. It's okay, but it's a cool concept with the mixing of the disco beat with the rock elements. The other song is The Geeks Don't Want No Freaks. Did they write that with Elvis Costello? I don't think so, but definitely felt like an Elvis Costello song. Once again, Joe Walsh with his song In the City doesn't feel like Eagles at all. It feels like Joe Walsh, which once again, Joe Walsh is awesome, so I don't really mind that, but it just doesn't sound like the Eagles. But there are some really awesome songs, the hits, like Heartache Tonight, The Long Run, and I Can't Tell You Why. And I was looking over the discography, and I was looking between the two different greatest hits that they had released. And of course, the one greatest hits, I think, is not too long ago beat out Thriller for being the number one selling album all time. And that was an awesome greatest hits. Of course, had a few more albums, to take its tracks from. And I feel like their second greatest hits that they had released, which really only featured songs from Hotel California and The Long Run, really just buy Hotel California. No use buying that greatest hits. I don't know. So, anyways, number 6, The Long Run. Okay, number 5 would be the Eagles' debut, and that would be self-titled, Eagles. I am very, very happy with this album. And actually, everywhere from here on, I feel are pretty much perfect albums, how they are. They very consistent track listings. Glenn Johns produced this album, and I believe that the band had gone to England and they couldn't find a record deal. And finally, they saw Glenn Johns, and he didn't really care for the material until they did some harmonization. They're like, whoa, man, signing you up. I'm not sure if this would have been the band or if this would have been production direction from Glenn Johns. But the opening track, "Take It Easy," it just that's I don't know. I mean, the guitar's got a lot of presence, maybe a little bit of reverb, a lot of treble, but it just sounds amazing. I feel like it was the perfect song to start out their first album. It basically says, "This is who we are. We're country rock. We're awesome, and we're going to tell you about it." Yeah, I mean, this album's got. I would be disappointing my childhood self if I didn't talk about "Witchy Woman." That is one great rock and roll song. Totally awesome. Just love it so much. But for me, the standout track is "Take the Devil." And that's something that I had actually realized when doing this is I really like Randy Meisner. He, I don't know, he just got some really cool kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, if it would be like folk, country, rock, but I mean, it's very much, I don't know what you'd call it, but it just got a lot of grit. Yeah, let's call it grit country rock. I really like his tracks. I never really paid attention to who wrote the songs, who sang the songs. I mean, I know that there's different people singing, but for the most part, I just enjoyed the music. But I tried to look at who sang which songs, and I realized, hey, I actually really like a lot of the tunes from Randy Meisner, even though they're not necessarily the hits off of the albums. But yeah, lots of great songs in a lot of ways, depending on how you like the sound of the group throughout the years, because of course they started off very country rock, and then gradually they went to more of a rock and roll sound. So I mean, like, I could see this being number one on the list as well, but I just don't feel like the songs are as strong as the album that is number one on the list. So anyways, number 6, the Eagles. All right, number 4 is their second album, Desperado. All right, so this is cool, and I actually really like the album artwork on the back of here. All right, there are a bunch of Desperados. The band's lined up on the bottom, all, well, I don't know, are they wanted dead or alive? But it's kind of cool, although seems to be one extra member in that photo. I should have searched it up to who was that extra person. And then who are these guys? Are they just stand-ins or are they friends? Hard to know. I mean, I know that Jackson Browne wrote some songs for them, so maybe he's there. I don't know. Like I said, I should have looked into it. Anyhow, I like this album partially because it's a concept album. The idea is Desperado. And I really like the use of the reprises in the album. I wish that bands actually did that a little bit more on their albums. It gives it more of an album feel. I mean, other great examples of that would be, for instance, like Sgt. Pepper. I'm sorry, this is another kind of Beatles reference, but on Band on the Run, that was pretty awesome too, where they bring back in Jet at the end of Picasso's Last Words. It's nice, and what I like about these reprises too is it's not that they're just bringing the song back. It seems obvious to me that they had alternative versions of the Doolin Dalton and Desperado, and I kind of like that idea where it's, okay, no, we're not going to make this into a bloody long song. We're just going to take that, throw it at the end, and it works really well. And also the Doolin Dalton banjo, which I believe is between Certain Kind of Fool and Outlaw Man. That sounds good. It's a good transition between the two. Of course, this album has, Tequila Sunrise and Desperado on it, which would be, some of the more well-remembered songs that you'd find on their greatest hits. But for me, the standout track would be Certain Kind of a Fool. Once again, I believe that's a Randy Meisner track. He's just awesome. What can I say? And that's the one thing, too, is that if you just listen to the greatest hits, you're going to miss out on all these golden album tracks. Right? So the Eagles, hey, more than worthwhile buying their entire discography. It's well worth the listen. All right, number 3. Yeah, I know there's kind of a trend going on here, but it's how it felt. Number 3 is the Eagles, On the Border. Wow, man, the songs on here. Now, I realize also that the group didn't write all their songs, okay? So, whereas, the Beatles were, just within their unit, the Eagles had some outside help, but hey, should we care about that? I mean, they released some pretty awesome albums. I believe that this is the first one that was produced by Bill Simichik. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. And he did great. Now, I mean, I know that Glenn Johns is a legendary producer. I know that he worked on the Beatles. I mean, we recently saw the Let It Be documentary, and there's some key scenes where you can say, wow, that guy actually had an impact on the music. So, but I felt like the production was a lot better on this album. I mean, this album would have come out in 1974, and something that have noticed from listening to music just in general, that within the decade of the 70s, the equipment that they had to produce albums gradually got better and better. I feel like leaps and bounds within that decade. I don't know. I mean, I guess digital would have made a big impact, but I almost feel like there was such a big leap just in that one decade. So that might have been a part of it too. I know that they also fired Glenn Johns partially because, if I recall correctly from the documentary, something to do with control of the drum mic placings. So I don't know. I guess they wanted a little more kick drum in their music, and Glenn Johns didn't like that. I think, from my understanding, I think Glenn Johns did maybe a single mic from a little bit of a distance, which, I don't know. I mean, more mics, you have more control. Anyhow, wow. Okay, so with this album, I was really thinking, looking through all the tracks, maybe besides My Man, I feel like every single song probably could have been a single, released as a single off of this album. Just awesome. As far as standout tracks go, I would say probably my favorite track would be You Never Cry Like a Lover. And it's just that guitar line and the emotion that's in that song. It just kind of blew me away. And don't get me wrong, I mean, the hits off of here are amazing too. But there's a little bit of a bias when it comes to hit songs, and you've heard them. And getting to, especially for myself, because I would have grown up listening to the greatest hits that came out in the early 2000s, that 2 CD set with the what would be like a bull skull on the front, and so I mean, I've heard those songs. And I mean, like songs like James Dean, that line, "Too fast to live, too young to die." I just, as a teenager, I just thought, what is that supposed to mean? Too fast to live, too young to die. I've heard other people say, oh, well, that's mocking James Dean, but actually to me it's like saying, too fast to live. He was a cool guy. He lived recklessly, but too young to die, saying it was a shame. It really was a shame that he had passed early. But I mean, gradually the band, even at this point, they're starting to move away from their country rock sound. But there's a lot of variety on this album, and I really like like a song like Midnight Flyer, is on the same album as Good Day in Hell. It's pretty awesome, the variety. And whereas like maybe if you take their first album, there wasn't that same kind of variety, and so in a way this album's a little refreshing. I also really liked Is It True as well. I thought that was a pretty standout song. So, number 3, On the Border. All right, next on the list, and once again, as you can see, there's a little bit of trend here, is number 2, One of These Nights. Wow. Okay, first off, let's just give a round of applause to the album artwork. Holy cow, that's got to be their coolest album. That's just wicked. And that leads into the standout track on this album, which is Journey of the Sorcerer, which is a bloody awesome song. I have a little bit of a soft spot for progressive music, and yeah, this one goes places. I mean, it's driven with a banjo orchestra. It's a pretty awesome combination. You know what? Just like the album before it, once again, every song, yeah, every song probably could have been released as a single. Maybe not to the Eagles standards, but I mean, if you had another group, yeah, it probably could have been done. This one actually had a few other songs I thought were real standout that weren't, those greatest hits songs, and they would have been Too Many Hands. Once again, one of those grit songs, real awesome, and Visions. Visions has a pretty awesome guitar lick in there. But yeah, and once again, I mean, like when you listen to One of These Nights, that bass line, do 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 do, it gives a variety. I like variety. You got that, and then you still got songs like Lion Eyes, which I say would be somewhat akin to like Tequila Sunrise again. I really like the variety here. And I mean, Don Felder, this is the first album that he appears on, obviously has a presence on this album. But it's the last album that Bernie was on. He didn't like that the band was going away from their country roots. Can you blame him? I mean, he's, what do you call that? The word ain't coming to me, but, completionist, I don't know. A purist. He was a purist. And they replaced him with Joe Walsh, which, like I said, Joe Walsh is awesome, but he's not Bernie Ledden. I think it's too bad. I feel like the band really lost something there. So, but yeah, I mean, pretty awesome album. Okay, number 1. If you know the band's albums, you already know what it is. And that's number 1, Hotel California. Their big album. Let's just talk about the album design. I mean, that's pretty cool. I thought it was interesting that they didn't have the Eagles' name on the front or the back. They also don't have a track listing on the back either. I don't have it here for this video because I got it up on the wall, but I've got the vinyl copy, and I was very impressed with the record sleeve because it's kind of, it'd be similar to this, kind of that 50s kind of style. I thought it was really good design for the centerfold as well. And let's be honest, Hotel California, that's the band's signature song, right? It's the best that they've made. That would be to the Eagles as what Stairway to Heaven is for Led Zeppelin. It's a pretty amazing song. And I mean that it's a song that goes places too. It's got a deep meaning to it. Essentially, the song is about life, pleasure, self-destruction. Maybe it's something I should talk about later on, actually going deeper into that song. But as far as my track that I thought was standout would actually be Wasted Time, along with the reprise. Holy cow. Man, what a great song. And I actually almost think that the reprise is all the better. I like that sort of stuff. I like the orchestrations. I like the emotion. And that was pretty awesome. Would it be as awesome as The Sorcerer's Journey? I don't know. That's kind of like, trying to put up, things that are kind of similar, but not quite similar. It's kind of like saying, what do I like more? Do I like oranges or do I like grapefruit? They're both citrus fruits, but they're kind of different. So, and once again, I mean, this was a very solid album. And whereas Joe Walsh, on some of those other albums that I talked about, His songs were more Joe Walsh. I felt like Pretty Maids in a Row, that it was very much an Eagles song. It was very much in place. Every single song on this album could have been a single. And it was just perfect. And that's the thing, too, is that this album totally went away from their sound. Um, I mean, I guess New Kid in Town is kind of countryish still, and Try to Love Again, I guess it's kind of, kind of that sound. I mean, Randy Meisner's vocals are very much kind of country-esque. I was a little disappointed that he really only had that one song, and I know that Randy partially left the group, later to be replaced by Timothy B. Schmidt. But part of it was due to him not wanting to sing Take It to the Limit, because that one high note that he had to reach and the pressure that would have been to get there. And I don't know, like, I remember hearing that the group didn't like each other. Right? I don't know if that was true from the beginning to the end, if some of the members liked each other. I mean, Glenn Frey and Don Henley, they seem to be best buds, or were, I guess, because Frey has passed away. But apparently they were a group that they didn't like each other very much. There was a lot of anger, contention, and drama in the group. But they released some amazing albums. And, a lot of people talking about musicians talk about, the idea that it's a marriage. And sometimes musicians, they get together and they really have something special. And I just think that it's too bad that we couldn't see, even a carnation of the group where you had all the members in the group. Because everyone added their own special flavor to the group. So that's too bad. But the nice thing, though, with them is that throughout their career, it wasn't all the same thing. It wasn't, oh, I heard that before. Right? The band kept pretty fresh. And, when I think of the Eagles, because for my father, it seemed like there was the triad of groups that he really liked. And I'm just going to exclude the Beatles because they don't really fit into what I'm going to say. And really, it was Chicago, because Chicago was, they took rock and kind of more bluesy jazz and, the horns, and that was their unique sound. And then you had ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, and they combined, the classical, the strings with the rock and roll, and they had their own sound. And the Eagles, although there were other groups like Ozark Mountain Daredevils, but, the country rock, they had their own sound. And the interesting thing is that all three of those groups, they all abandoned their sound eventually. And I don't know, I mean, maybe it's not fun to have your back up against the wall. Maybe something felt good initially, but eventually it's like, okay, well, I can't hear another string part in my song, or it's just going to drive me crazy. But yeah, I really felt like this group, from their debut album, with every single album, I felt like the songs just became stronger and stronger and stronger. Although I love Hotel California, to an extent, I kind of miss some of that, more of that country sound. And hey, that was pretty much totally abandoned on the long run. And the long run, I feel like, they hit their peak with Hotel California and they just fell on long run. It's got some, classic songs on it, but it's not the same. Even though on this listen, I liked it a lot more than before when I had listened to it. I just remember the first time I heard it thinking, that was it? I was expecting a lot more, but it seems like a lot of groups kind of have that. I mean, look at Fleetwood Mac. Their follow-up album really wasn't that great. Look at Supertramp. Their follow-up album to Breakfast in America. Oh, man. Not as good. So maybe it's hard to follow up a perfect album. Although, in my opinion, they had done it a number of times. So yeah, I mean, I think that the Eagles, in many respects, are the Beatles of the 70s, even though I much prefer ELO to the Eagles. I'll have to do an ELO countdown pretty soon because they are smack dab amazing. But I can definitely appreciate the music of the Eagles. There's a reason why, like in commercials, why they're advertised as America's favorite band. It's because they were amazing. They were consistent, and it's too bad we couldn't have gotten more out of them. And that was the other thing that I always kind of wondered is why did they make more than just Long Road Out of Eden? I mean, I guess the world of music was changing, and maybe it wasn't worthwhile. And I mean, they spent I think 6 years to make this album. But yeah, I mean, hey, I'll cherish this collection until I die. One of my favorite bands, that's for sure. All right, well, that was my list. Do you agree with it? Yes, no, maybe so. Once again, just a reminder. Number 7, Long Road Out of Eden. Number 6, The Long Run. Number 5, the debut album, self-titled. Number 4, Desperado. Number 3, On the Border. Number 2, One of These Nights. Number 1, Hotel California. All right, well, that's all for this time around. And like I said, let me know in the comments below what you thought of my list. And hey, what's your list like? Because we all have different tastes. All right, till next time, eh?